Before you submit any offer on a home in New York City, there are 3 things you need to do. By the end of this video, you'll know exactly how to do all 3, including the specific contract language that protects you on possession, which is one thing many buyers skip, and the #1 reason deals collapse at the last second in the 5 boroughs. One thing before we go on, this video is general information only. Every transaction in New York City is different, and nothing here substitutes for legal advice specific to your situation. Real estate law in the 5 boroughs has a lot of moving parts, and the details of your deal matter, so be sure to consult with an attorney of your choosing. Here's something sellers don't always tell you, and sometimes genuinely they don't know themselves. There may be open violations sitting on that property right now, not because anyone was hiding anything, just because nobody checked. In New York City, there are multiple departments that can issue violations against a property. The 2 main big ones will be the New York City Department of Buildings, the DOB, and New York City Housing Preservation and Development, HPD. The Department of Buildings regulates the structures and issues violations for unpermitted work, stop work orders, and code issues. HPD regulates landlord-tenant issues and can issue violations for repairs and other conditions that a tenant reports. None of those violations disappear when the property sells. They transfer to you, a new buyer. So if a seller finished the basement without pulling a permit, added a bathroom nobody approved, or had a contractor do electrical work off the books and you close on that property, well, that's your problem now. The city doesn't care who owned it when the violation was issued. So before you fall in love with the house, before you start picturing where your furniture goes, go pull the records. NYC BIS and NYC DOB Now are both public, both free, and both show you the building's permit and violation history. You're looking for open complaints, unresolved violations, expired permits on recent work. If there was a renovation in the last 5 years, you want to see that it was done with proper permits and that those permits were closed out. For housing maintenance violations, things like heat, hot water, pest, structural conditions, check NYC HPD online. That's where tenant complaints and housing code violations show up. None of this takes more than 20 or 30 minutes, and it tells you whether the property you're about to make an offer on has a paper trail that's going to cost you time and money to clean up after closing. Do this before you make an offer, not after you've made an offer and you're emotionally committed. Before. Checking the paperwork is half the battle though, because well, what happens when every report comes back clean and the house is literally falling apart behind the drywall? That's exactly what step 2 is for. Once you've pulled that report, the next thing you will need to do is to get inside that property with someone who actually knows what they're looking at. Step 2, get an inspection. A buyer walking through an open house on a Saturday afternoon may be seeing what the seller wants them to see. An inspector, on the other hand, could see what's actually there. Inspectors check most things buyers don't think to look at. Electrical panel, plumbing, roof from the outside and the attic from the inside, foundation, the boiler, the water heater. A finished basement looks fine until an inspector pulls back and finds moisture damage or improper wiring. A roof looks fine until someone who knows what to look for gets up there and tells you it's got 2 years left on it. Budget between $500 and $800 depending on the size of the property, how quickly you need it done, and where the property is located. That's real money, and it might feel like a lot before you've even made an offer, but here's what that money actually buys you. That bad inspection report is one of the most effective tools you have to negotiate a seller down. If the inspector finds cracked foundation, a failed boiler, or knob and tube wiring that needs to come out, you go back to the seller with a number, not a feeling. A written report from a licensed professional that says this property has these problems and here's what they cost to fix. Sellers respond to that. That $800 can put thousands back in your pocket. On timing. If you can get an inspection done before you submit your offer, do it. Once you sign a contract, you can't go back and say, oh, my inspection report is showing X, Y, and Z problems. I want to renegotiate the terms of the deal. So make sure you get your inspection done before submitting your offer. And if the inspection does come back with real problems, a boiler that's at the end of its life, a roof that needs replacing, a foundation crack, you've got 3 options. Renegotiate the price, ask the seller to fix it before closing, or walk away before you've made an offer. All 3 are valid. None of them are available to you if you skip the inspection. You've checked permits and violations. The inspection came back solid. You're ready to submit an offer. But what if you show up on closing day, hand over your money, and someone is still living in the house? If you skip this last step, it's not hypothetical. That's what actually happens. The inspection tells you what's wrong with the building. But there's one more thing you should nail down before you submit your offer. And most buyers don't think about it until it's too late. Step 3, get clear on possession. Most buyers assume that closing means getting the keys and moving moving in. In New York City, that assumption can leave you owning a property you legally can't occupy. Homes for sale in the 5 boroughs often have 1 or more tenants. Sometimes it's the second unit. Sometimes it's the primary unit. And that tenant may not be leaving just because the property sold. Under New York law, tenants have real protections. You can't walk in after closing and tell someone to get out by the weekend. If that tenant has a lease, or if they qualify for certain other protections, removal is a legal process, and it can take months. Even if it's the seller themselves residing in the property, you still want a clear answer when they anticipate delivering vacant possession. If a seller is selling their home to buy a new one, then issues may arise if they start their search only after you sign a contract. Very simply, what if they don't find a new property quickly? You're stuck in a contract waiting for the seller to figure out their situation before you can move on with your situation. Another issue that comes up is sellers delaying vacating the property, which can create issues with your mortgage if you lock the rate early and then the seller's plans create delays. This can cost you thousands of dollars. This is why delivered vacant has to be in your contract before you sign anything. The exact language you want to see is seller will deliver possession of the premises vacant and in broom clean condition at closing. If that sentence isn't in the contract, you don't have a guarantee. You have a hope. Now, if the timing is uncertain and it happens, say the seller needs extra time after closing because they're selling this property to close on another one, or a tenant's supposed to leave but hasn't yet. There are common tools for that. A post-closing possession agreement is fairly common and spells out a time limit for a seller to deliver vacant possession to the buyer, as well as charges the seller for every day they stay past that closing date. An escrow holdback means a portion of the seller's proceeds stays in escrow with their attorney until the property is actually vacant. These aren't complicated arrangements, but they need to be negotiated and should be written into the contract before signing it. Possession is not an afterthought. It's a negotiation point, and if you don't address it before you submit an offer, you're giving up leverage you can't get back once the deal's done. These 3 steps take a few days. Fixing the problems you discover after closing can take years and thousands of dollars. If you're buying a 1 or 2 family home in New York City and you want to talk through where you are in the process, the Law Office of Richard Kiston offers complimentary consultations. Virtual, no obligation. The link is in the description below. Come with your questions and we'll take it from there. Now, once you submit an offer that gets accepted, you'll want to know exactly what happens from contract to the closing table. Every document, every step, every dollar. And you can discover the entire process by watching this video right over here.